My name is Brad Moore. I'm CEO of Global Cannabis Applications Corp. We're a Vancouver, Canada-based firm. What we do is we're on the technology side of things. We've been involved in cannabis since 2017. Basically, the idea was we were looking at cannabis, and I had some investments in cannabis. I was doing well in those, but I was having a really hard time buying into the concept that this was actually medical, just because you had in Canada, people would have like a green neon flashing sign hanging off their door, and that was medicinal. And somebody who'd been smoking cannabis for 25 years would tell you what you should take and put in your body. So a lot of things have happened since then. Our approach has always been trying to focus, especially in Canada, our approach has always been that there's a better way. We've actually really kind of tried to dig into the idea of trying to understand what happens in your body at a given point in time when you take product X for a treatment of ailment or a symptom Y under a set of circumstances. Now that's really, really important at a given point in time under a set of circumstances. And it was really interesting just listening to what they were talking about in Germany, what's going on, because I was just in Ottawa with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and we were talking about Parliament. I was up on Parliament Hill talking with parliamentarians, the Minister of Finance, Innovation, and Health Canada. And one of the things we all agreed upon is that since legalization in the adult rec space, 60% of it's pretty good. But the other 35–40%, the problems are so blaringly bad, right? It's just like it's been just a nightmare to a certain extent, like they've overshadowed. And that's from taxation to banking to regulatory issues. Like, for example, in Canada, hemp falls under Health Canada. So if you want to make like a shirt out of hemp, that's a Health Canada issue. That doesn't make a lot of sense, as I'm sure we can all imagine. And so as it was said, we've got feet straddled in different industry. We're kind of saying it's medicinal, and we're kind of saying it's not. We're treating it like a foodstuff. So we have this weird patchwork of frameworks of problems. And a big problem with that is, because it's complicated, it's cannabis, right? It's one of the most complex plants on the face of the world. And we see cannabis cultivation similar to a manufacturing process. So what that means to us is that as you consume it over a period of time, as it's cultivated, it never stops changing until you put it into your body. And I think we can all agree on that, especially with flower. And so similar to about when it's harvested, the way it's managed and handled, cannabis is very susceptible to things to do with the type of water, to humidity, to light, to temperature. And so you can get a large variation, a variety of problems. And considering when we talk about, especially about medicinal, we have a variable plant and a variable human being, a lot of things can happen in between there. And one of the problems with that is what we call this is the issue of product consistency. In the medical space, we talk about efficacy, and in the adult rec space, we talk about it as a brand. Like, who wants to buy a pair of Nike running shoes if they keep moving the swoop all over the swish all over the place? Is that what we call it, a swoop? Yeah. And nobody wants to take a medical product if you don't know what you're going to get out of this. When I speak to my own situation in 2020, like I was diagnosed with an early form of colon cancer, and I went through 25 radiation treatments and 52 chemo treatments in 5 weeks. I had a sunburn where the sun doesn't shine. And so, it got to a point in it where sitting down was really hard and I was extremely sick. And I remember going to the cancer clinic, and these people were great in Vancouver. I mean, they were fantastic to me. But when I asked, what should I use? Because their suggestion was, well, if you took 60 milligrams of morphine on a daily basis, it will help you with your pain management. And I said, well, what about cannabis? Because I work in the industry, you think I would know things or they could tell me? And I got 5 different answers from 5 different people. And it's interesting, especially when you talk about when you're sick, that's not a luxury you have. And I think that's a big problem. And it's one of the things we forget, right? Is that when you're looking at a patient and you're saying you should take this, especially when we start using the term medical, nobody has that luxury. I didn't have the ability to sit and do 8 hours. And I was talking to people in Israel and Australia and Canada. And like I said, at the cancer clinic, we said, we can't tell you what to take that way, Brad, but we will tell you what morphine will do. And so, after doing that and then dealing with the long-term opioid effects of it, That's the direction that I had to go, and I work in the industry. So we look at this functionally as a problem of a supply chain. And what it means is that there's a bit of a problem, and that problem boils down to this. You know, when you take a look at that image, and we do that for a very specific thing, we have a product that's cultivated, and then depending how it works and where you are, and whether it's medical or rec, it can get sent to a manufacturer, and then it can get sent to a distributor, and they can go to retail. That's a lot of people touching it. A lot of different things can happen. And what happens is it moves along. Generally, you're worrying about once you've sold it, people are starting to worry about the next gram that has to be cultivated and sold. So there becomes an abdication of responsibility, but it's not like I don't care what happens. It's about a data abdication, and then it gets moved down the chain. And so, which is fine, but it's not fine when there's a problem, okay? So when there's a problem, it's like, how do we fix it? And generally in cannabis, and we see in the adult rec, people just stop buying product. I'll give you a good example. In the liquor control, the Ontario Liquor Control Board, if you're a micro-cultivator, everybody says the micro-cultivators don't care about their product, and it's bad product, and it's this and X and Y and Z, but it will sit for 6 months in a warehouse before it gets on a shelf. Well, if you think about that, could you imagine being a cultivator and your product sitting for 6 months, drying out, being overexposed to different temperatures to light? Obviously, this is not what you cultivated, and there's a net end result to that. So I'm sure everybody remembers a well, I don't know if I want to call it a comparable. I want to give it an example, is when the issue that came out with spinach and E. coli, right? And so what happened is somebody got sick. There's a problem. There's a problem to do with a product. And so what they had to do is an investigation. There was recall. Products were pulled off the shelf. Everything was pulled back. Millions of dollars were lost. And when we say, well, what if? So that became a supply chain issue. So what if there was a better way to do it? And that's what we do, and that's what we think where the opportunity is in this industry. And so we start talking about the use of the blockchain. Now, generally people go, oh, here's the tech guy talking about blockchain, something cool and new. But the idea about blockchain really is, though, and we all have to kind of look at it where it came from. It was always about just a piece of data that was time-stamped and locked up, right? That was the whole kind of construct of it. And the opportunity with that really is that we now have the ability to actually look at it from, because if we look at it, cannabis as from a manufacturing process, that it's always changing, and who it goes to and how they materially handle it can affect what the net end product is, there's something very kind of cool that can come out of that argument. So we do, and we believe in a process. Hopefully this, all right. Maybe that's not going to work. So the idea about that is it's supposed to go into a figure 8, and then it shows the flow. We think there's actually a better way, because think about seed to sale. So what's the whole concept of seed to sale? Seed to sale is creating a process where you're pushing information forward. And generally what you're doing as a cultivator for pushing information forward is you're really trying to get onto the right side of the regulator. You're trying to show things. But we started to say, well, what if we could do this? What if we could anchor information backwards, right? What if we could attach a consumer experience on a per gram basis? And why don't you think a little bit about that, right? What if you grow 1 gram and then you consume 1 gram? Now, that's incredible. Could you imagine being in a situation that you're sitting in front of you're in an adult rec situation. Let's say, for example, the Liquor Control Board, you could scan a code and see every attestation of cultivation. I mean, they do this with organic fish farming. But what if you could attach a consumer experience? Now put that into cannabis. What if you could attach it, and then you could have people anonymously attach an experience back to it, and then feed that data all the way back through the supply chain. There's some wonderful things that are going to happen there when you can feed consumer data back, right? You start to understand in real time what's happening. And most importantly, when we think about spinach, if there's a problem, we can identify it in minutes. There's actually a study that was done, and they looked, the reason we show the spinach example, that they could have identified that issue using blockchain in mere hours. And you know, it's kind of funny, and I have to read this because legal tells me I have to read it out exactly this way or I get in trouble. It's about what's a better way to do this, right? And so we've come up with the idea is that the process of determining the average efficacy of a consumed gram of medical cannabis or CBD for the treatment of a specific ailment through the use of an algorithm, which is then stored on a blockchain with the specific growing data of that gram. So, wow, right? But that's actually our global patent. We've actually patented that process and built a technology around that. So we do have some expertise in saying that. And like I said, when we got back involved in cannabis in 2018, we thought the relationship actually lied between the person selling it and the person consuming it. We didn't understand enough that it was really about the cultivator and the patient or the consumer. The relationship, see, everybody else in the middle has a job because of those two. Right? Fulfillment. But there's what happens is that process in between, if it gets monkeyed around with, if it gets changed, just like I said about the micro cultivators in Canada, you end up with a different product. So we're suggesting that you can get out there and you can make a different product, or sorry, a different outcome. Remember, going back to what happens at your body at a specific point in time when you use a product for treatment of a specific ailment, because once again, for cannabis and medical, we treat symptoms, not ailments, that we would have a different outcome. So hopefully this one works. I guess not. All right. That was fast. Well, so what it's supposed to do, believe it or not, this is actually a handheld app. So one of the things that when we talk, guys, when we talk about blockchain, a lot of times.
Maybe with the playing the.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure, if you can figure it out, yeah. Thank you. You can tell we're a pretty high-tech blockchain company. Can you get it going?
Is it supposed to like start?
Well, this is actually a video that runs.
It looks like
okay.
Steel.
All right. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. All right. So the idea, once again, is like really what we're just going to show you is how to do a series of attestations. So the concept is that we've developed a solution. As you can take a look, it's handheld. It's blockchain in an app. Instead of going out and getting a whole bunch of stuff built and doing it that way, it's all kind of built into one app, and you can put an attestation. The way you access the data and the information is on a QR code. But besides all that, the whole concept is we would challenge everybody, and we challenge regulators, and we work in hemp and we work in a lot of different verticals. Like I said, we started off in cannabis for that very simple thing. We think that there's a better way, that there's like I said, there's a lack of data connectivity all the way through. And to truly understand what's happening with your product, you have to track it all the way through. Our whole objective, and we would challenge everybody, especially from the cultivation. And you know, and it's funny because we had with the Ministry of Finance, of all people, is we talked about the ability to feed data back, because there's something wonderful that happens when you can understand what's going on with the product, right? You can write for a cultivator, you understand how to actually market, and if you have an issue to do with cultivation, you can grow better products. If you're a distributor, how to actually handle those products better. And then I think more importantly than anything for regulators, if you have better information, you can write better rules, right? Now, good luck with that, right? As somebody's nodding their head, good luck with that, because the thing is, but there are different ways to do it. And blockchain, like I said, blockchain 2 years ago was all that fluffy crypto stuff. But really, when you understand where it came from, the whole purpose of it was just to anchor information, right? Timestamp that. So the ability to like understand what's going on in the greenhouse with the grower, the mother plant, to a batch, from the laboratory results, the distribution, each one of those steps time-stamped and attested all the way through. The level of information that you can get from that, you can truly understand what's going on with your patients or your customers and the flow of that data back. And here's the important part, is it doesn't take anything away from people's margin. All you're doing is smoothing the information, right? And we're using this right now. I can tell you this app is used in South Africa with an insurance company to help underwrite insurance policies. We're working with close to 10 million grams of cannabis in Northern California, right? To help growers over there. Used to make $2,000 a pound. Now they're down to $500. Why? Because the black market is owning that segment. Because the fact is, the people look at the product. Why should I pay more for a poor product? Right? There's good product available to them. We're using in Canada. We've partnered with an LP in Canada. I'm a veteran. I served overseas in the former Yugoslavia. In Canada, we have a whole generation of veterans that the Canadian government is covering their prescriptions to the tune of $117 million. And really, all that they're saying is, here you go, go figure it out yourself. So we got to think about, like, you're covering this is huge amount of tax dollars that are going out the door, and people still don't really understand what's going on. It's not the best solution we can give to people that have given so much already, right? In United States, and for some reason this is not showing up, but the other thing that we've done is we've incorporated, and we're working now with ESG. Because when we talk about supply chain, blockchain and supply chain, one of the very first and foremost things that we use is really, it's about who you are, who you say you are, and what you do. Like, this is great for proving it with the product, and it's great for consumers and data. ESG, so what we do is we provide cannabis cultivators, manufacturers, distributors, and retailers now through this app is to put ESG on the blockchain. And spending, no offense to anybody from Ernst & Young if they're in here, spending $30,000, $40,000 to get that done, for a couple of grand a year, we can do all your attestations for you, and you can put it on the blockchain and then put a QR code. So the idea, once again, folks, what I want to leave you with more than anything is that there might be a different way to do things, and that's what we would challenge you with. There might be a better way to look at things, and blockchain and advanced technologies like algorithms do this. We kind of got a lot of, for any of our friends here from Israel, we spent a lot of time in Israel figuring out what they did, looked at the Canadian model, and then came up with the concept. And I had somebody who spoke Hebrew and really broken English spend like every day for 4 months trying to explain to me what blockchain is, until I woke up and finally understood actually how it went. And I got it figured out, and then you saw the opportunity. But that's what we'll leave you with. If you have any questions about it, please let us know, and thank you very much for your time.